obligatory and should be eradicated by enforced sterilisation. But Baden Powell was no pessimist. He was not prepared to write off the nation's youth.
When somebody's a great national hero, they're a great national hero to boys. And quite spontaneously, little boys' groups, they might be choirs, they might be little local clubs or whatever it is, asked him to be their patron, and he sent them advice.
When ordinary people began to buy a book he'd written, called Aids to Scouting, he realised that though they were originally designed for soldiers, the same techniques could work for civilian boys.
Scouting is a character-building exercise. It teaches self-discipline, observation, inquisitiveness. These are all, to Baden Powell, good qualities.
Baden Powell agreed to use Aids to Scouting as the basis for a new work, which would promote the health and well-being of British youth. The Edwardians were the first generation to go football crazy. But then, as now, not everybody approved. The idea of being a fan, of spectating rather than participating, did not appeal to Baden Powell. He believed in a healthy mind in a healthy body. Mens sana in corpore sano. That was the real goal for a boy.
My heart sickens at thousands of boys and young men, pale and narrow-chested, hunched up, miserable specimens, smoking endless cigarettes, numbers of them betting, all of them learning to be hysterical as they groan or cheer in panic unison with their neighbours.
For Baden Powell, physical and moral health went hand in hand. And when the men of Britain were strong, so was the country itself. No body part was neglected in the quest for national vitality.
To be healthy and strong, you must keep your blood healthy and clean inside you. This is done by breathing in lots of pure, fresh air and by clearing out all dirty matter from inside your stomach, which is done by having a rear daily without fail. If there is any difficulty about it one day, drink plenty of good water and practice body twisting exercises. And all should be well.
What struck me editing the book was the number of times Baden Powell talks about orifices. Mouths, anuses, eyes, ears, all the openings of the body. It seems to me that this reflects Baden Powell's concern with national self-defense, with keeping the body of the nation disciplined and controlled, not allowing any inroads to disease and infection.
Unlike traditional educationalists, Baden Powell also believed it was in the national interest for boys to show initiative. And he charged each scout with doing a good turn every day.
Need a hand with that box. There we go. Good morning. Would you like some help crossing the road?
Despite his best efforts, many of the issues of a century ago are still high on the social agenda today.
There we are.
I'm going to see David Lammy, MP for Tottenham in London, Minister for Culture, and more importantly, former Cub Scout, to discuss Baden Powell's influence on New Labour.
At what age did they get you, the Scouts?
Oh, God, 7.
7?
Yeah.
Right.
Young.
Yeah. And you, I mean, all joking apart, a pretty formative 4 years at that time.
Oh, yeah. I remember a particular week in which the whole purpose was to knock on people's doors to say, can we wash your car in the Cubs uniform? You'd get money.
It was Bob a Job Week,
Bob a
wasn't
Job
it?
Week. You'd get money for doing that.
Yeah.
But it was also, you know, this was bringing you into contact with the neighbourhood.
Yeah.
It was that or knock down ginger, we used to call it, where you knock on the door and run away. But this time you actually knocked on the door, you got some money, and you
did something useful.
And you did something useful. That's a great thing.
The subtitle for Scouting for Boys is actually A Handbook for Instruction in Good Citizenship. Yeah. Now, I'm afraid he says, indifferent citizenship is, and always has been, the progeny of indifferent government.
Yeah, I mean, well, I suspect what Baden Powell would say is that citizenship is not just something that's kind of learned in a classroom. Mm. It is something about being a citizen and learning that with a group of other people,
yep,
and in a wider community.
At one point, he's talking about socialism, and
I hope he's nice about socialism. Is he nice?
Well, he claims to be a socialist.
Oh, good.
At one point, which again I think would surprise a lot of people. He's less the sort of Tory hate figure that people imagined.
You know, what Baden Powell was keen on was community. Mm. I suspect he had a kind of Gordon Brown sense of prudence and hard work.
And of thrift. It's all in there.
And of thrift and of duty.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there for Labour folk, but actually there's a lot there also for, you know, the kind of one nation Tory.
But are the virtues Baden Powell encouraged in Scouts really as highly valued today? Baden Powell writes about boys just sort of loafing around on street corners smoking, doing nothing. And he said he wanted to teach them something useful. Now, what can you do? Do you do first aid?
Yeah, on the number of camps everyone has to know a certain amount of first aid you have on camp.
Right, because in here he describes an incident where there was a woman and she was drowning in a pond in London, and there were 5 useless boys on the side who didn't save her because they couldn't swim and they couldn't do first aid. That wouldn't be you, would it?
I've been trained in first aid to, well, a fairly moderate level, but we're given the skills so we know what to do in situations.
Right, if I had
Maybe
a heart
not as
attack
extreme.
now, could one of you save my life?
Probably.
I'm hoping. I really am. By 1906, Baden Powell was convinced that his scheme could turn dissolute boys into decent citizens, and he began to write a version of what would become Scouting for Boys. But it took the help of a hard-nosed salesman to galvanise him and turn his modest proposal into a national sensation. Arthur Pearson was proprietor of the Daily Express and a media magnate of his day.
Baden Powell, who had a suspicion of business people, also knew how the world worked, that he needed a man like Pearson. He didn't want to need him. In fact, he hated the idea of it. But without him, it couldn't happen.
By summer 1907, Baden Powell had completed a first draft. He was now ready to put his theories into practice. He invited 20 boys for a camping holiday off the coast of Dorset, on Brownsea Island.